Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton with Peyton Energetics, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So in today's POV, the Pleiadians wanted to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is releasing resistance. Now, as you'll know, we have been going through what the Ps have been describing for several years now as a separation of timelines. And now we have gotten far enough along in this process that the timelines have separated sufficiently that things are really starting to accelerate for those on ascension timelines. So in today's video, the Ps are going to talk to us about how resistance is coming up for those of us on ascension timelines and how we can handle it so that we move through it as quickly as possible. But before we jump into talking about resistance, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. Now, as we've been talking about for quite a while now, we have been going through this process of timeline separation. Because as we know, there are infinite timelines. Every human is not on the same train. There are those humans who have chosen to ascend in this lifetime, and there are lots of humans who have chosen not to. And neither path is better than the other. None of us are superior to anyone else because we are or are not on an ascension timeline. This is all just a function of vibrational choice. And this choice is made not at the level of our little personalities as we think of ourselves, but it's made at the soul level. So we have been on this journey for a while now where we have been seeing a separation of timelines in our reality. And it's really vivid now. This is not something that is theoretical. This is something you can look around and tell that you may be on a completely different planet, it seems, than someone standing right next to you. And that's because you may be. You may be on completely different timelines. So what happens as this timeline split accelerates is we're starting to pick up the pace of the energy. As we start to move our vibration higher, things start to move faster. So one of the things that is starting to happen that we're all starting to notice is resistance is popping up much more quickly. But the good news about where we are right now on this separation of timelines is it's much easier for us to move through the resistance. So whereas things that 3 or 4 years ago might have taken us 6 months or a year to process and move through, we can now move through in a matter of hours. And so the Ps wanted to talk to us a little bit about navigating resistance right now so that we are processing things as quickly and comfortably as we can be. So one thing you'll notice if you're on an ascension timeline is that resistance may pop up for you very quickly. You can be going through your day in a perfectly fine mood and just get hit out of nowhere with a wave of resistance. You don't even know where it came from. It's like, all of a sudden, why am I in anxiety? Why am I feeling fear? Nothing even changed. I was sitting at my laptop for an hour. So what is happening now is we are seeing the energies move through us much more quickly. So what the Ps wanted to talk about in today's video is to help us with processing what's coming up because the energies are coming much faster now and we want to integrate them and not avoid them. So what happens as we get hit with these waves of resistance? And when we are talking about this resistance popping up in us, it's just showing us those issues that we haven't completed our healing work on. So anything that is popping up for you is just reflecting to you where you're still out of alignment. So this isn't a bad thing. If you look at this as it's giving you data, it's giving you valuable intel as to what you need to process, you can move through these resistant patches much more quickly. So what the Ps wanted to share with us in today's POV is to encourage us to do something that's a little counterintuitive. Now, when we get hit with a wave of resistance, maybe you're just going about your day and you hear a news story that's very upsetting, or something happens that you would characterize as a negative manifestation. Just something happens that throws you off your beat for a minute. Our natural human response when resistance pops up is to avoid it. That is the 3D operating system, because when something comes up that feels negative to us, whether that's a negative emotion or whether it's something we see as negative in the world, our mind automatically jumps into gear and tries to separate us from that thing. So you may notice when this happens to you that your mind gets very amped up. that you start spinning through the story, you start getting mad or into fear. You start to think of that bad person or that bad thing that's happening. So what happens is our natural human reaction of just this 3D body-mind system that we are still somewhat operating from wants to resist the resistance. You want to push that thing away. And one thing I notice when resistance will pop up in me is that I will automatically kind of recoil from it. Like I can feel my whole body pulling back. Like, oh, I don't want it to get on me. I don't want it to touch me. And this is just how I tend to notice my egoic reaction. And each of us is going to have our own personal way that this comes up for us. But just notice whenever something kind of crops up in the day that throws you off a little, how your body and your mind react to it. Because all that does, it's going to show you your personal reaction style. So mine is always to kind of pull back, like I don't want it to get on me. And what happens is we're seeing the reaction of our egoic self. And the egoic self, the egoic mind, which kept us going for the entire 3D game, wants to separate us. It wants to make that thing separate from us. It's not us, right? We're not doing that. We would never do that, right? But what happens is we create separation. That's how the ego mind operates. But the P's want to encourage us to flip that on its head, because every time we have that reaction of pulling back from something, making it bad or wrong, and some of it, y'all, there is no way around thinking that we really don't want to see these things in our reality. But the P's want to offer us a better way to deal with these things that pop up and throw us off. And so most of us, instead of letting the ego system have its way, which is to pull back, to avoid, to not want to look at things, the P's wanted to offer us and encourage us to lean into it, to actually go into your resistance. Because as they like to say, all resistance is yours. Because remember, everything is yours. Everything in your manifested reality is your energy. It's your creation. Yep, even that bad thing, even that bad person, it's all you. So rather than letting the 3D body-mind system play out automatically the way it would, which would be to avoid, to not want to look at it, to get out of the way of it so it doesn't spray on you, what the P's wanted to offer us and encourage us is to lean into it, to actually dive into whatever that sensation is, that emotion, that feeling state that is coming up for you. So if you see something that puts you in fear, going into the sensation of the fear. And that's the opposite of what your ego mind is going to want to do. Your ego mind is going to be shouting, danger, danger, don't do that. You're going to get lost in it. You won't be able to get out. But we don't want to follow the egoic system anymore. So if you can, whenever resistance pops up, whatever that issue looks like in your day that throws you off, go into the feeling state of it. Because what happens as you dive into the feeling state of it, as you allow yourself to feel that emotional state, what happens is you dissolve the energy. And that's what we're trying to do. That's how you process the energy. And you can't process it if you're trying to avoid and separate from it. So what happens when we let the ego mind run the game? The ego mind wants to do that separation that we talked about. But as you separate from something, what happens is you force that frozen energy, whatever that feeling state was of that issue, you freeze it in your energy field, like a little frozen meatball of energy in your energy field. And it just stays there. And what happens is that little meatball of energy continues to create. So it is going to continue to draw more scary things to you. It's going to continue to draw more things that make you angry or make you feel powerless. Because essentially, you're freezing negative energy in your energy field. So instead, what the P's want to offer us today is a technique to release the energy. We always want to keep energy in motion. And when we keep energy in motion, we move it through us. And that's how it's supposed to go. We're supposed to move these energies through us, acknowledge them, sit with them, own them as part of our creation, because everything is part of our creation, and let it go. But what happens is If we try to separate from it, if we try to push it away, you freeze it, you hold onto it. And then 24/7, that little meatball of energy continues to attract more things that match it into your daily experience. So if you take the P's suggestion to flip this on its head, move into your 5D processing system, the way you do that is moving into your resistance. As soon as something throws you off, asking yourself, what is the feeling state that is coming up here? Just identify the emotion, the feeling state of it. Doesn't have to be sexy, doesn't have to be anything complicated. Does it make you feel angry? Does it make you feel judgmental? Does it make you feel powerless? What is the feeling state that that manifestation creates in you? And then go into the feeling state. Now, there's something that's very important about what the P's are suggesting here. They're not suggesting that we go into the story of what's happening. So say, for example, you are going through your daily life, you're on social media, and you see a story of something going on in the world that is just really cruel and terrible. And y'all, there's tons of examples, so just pick one. And what happens is it starts to make you feel really, really angry. Now, the P's are not encouraging us when they say to go into the feeling state of it, to go into the story with the mind. So they're not asking you to sit and think about the story. That is getting into the mind again. And the mind is going to want to chew on the story. We don't care about the story. So just let go of whatever the story is, focusing on the feeling of it. That's where our energetic work is. Because as you go into the feeling of it, just peel off that story, throw it away. We don't care what it is, because the story was only how your higher self gets your attention, right? It has to give you something in your life that catches your attention so that you know where you have energy that needs to be integrated. So we're not ever talking here about mulling over the story that makes you mad. That's what the ego mind is going to want to do. It's going to want to rant and rave about whatever that storyline was, right? Whoever is doing bad things or bad things that are happening in some part of the world, right? We want to get underneath that level of the story, into the feeling state of it, and then go into the feeling state. As you do this, you dissolve the energy. So what happens is you process the resistance very, very quickly. Now, one thing that can help you as you play with this technique is to focus on the feeling that is coming up, that negative emotion, as sensation. We don't want to get into the mind with this. So sometimes it can be helpful to kind of keep the ego mind out of it if we just focus on how that feels in our physical body. Your body is your best feedback tool. So if you focus on how that resistance feels in your body, what is the theme that's coming up? Is it anger? Is it powerlessness? Is it guilt? Is it shame? You just want to know what the flavor of it is, and then dive into the feeling state of it as sensation. As you do that, you will very quickly dissolve the negative imprinting on that energy, which means you keep the energy moving and you move it through you, and then you've done your healing work on it. Because if you're avoiding it, if you're suppressing it, not wanting to look at it, and we don't, let's face it, some of this stuff is pretty hard to look at right now. We don't want to be in avoidance of it, because that turns it into a frozen meatball. And all that does is create more problems for us in the future. So the P's wanted to help us kind of flip our reactions on their head to get a little bit better results as things start to really just move quickly for us on ascension timelines. So that is what the P's wanted to share with us in today's POV. Let me know in the comments what you want to know from the P's. And while you're down there, don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.